other than considering whether or not the bill should go forward as it is or it should be withdrawn in its entirety, and what options are there that we should be looking at if any of those options is taken. So there is a lot to be desired.
Reverend Nyandega, the church is already saying away with it in its entirety. What are you looking at? Are we finally looking at a formula for regulating the church, or you're still feeling, no, we are far from it?
No, actually, Melissa, thank you so much. I want to greet our viewers this evening and to thank you most sincerely for inviting us to come and discuss this bill. The churches have no problem with the regulation.
Okay.
In fact, the churches are already being regulated under the Societies Act 1968. Many churches are required to submit returns. The churches have a structure of operating. But even before that, the churches already have, many churches are in umbrella organizations. And we have, for you to agree to come, to join an umbrella organization like Evangelical Alliance of Kenya, you are in a way saying, I would like to be accountable to my peers, my colleagues. Then we also have laws in the country that's regulating. But the idea of regulating churches in a better way is informed by the realities of the day. We are talking about churches being registered, put together with many organizations, many groups, societies, under the Societies Act 1968. 1968 to date is a long time. We have a new constitution, time has changed. There are many, that time 1968 the population was quite low. Now so it's time now for the churches to even have their own mechanisms for regulations. So we don't have a problem with regulation. We have a problem with the manner in which the bill is proposing to regulate us. Yeah. The Mungatana bill, as you say it, Religious Organization Bill 2024, was a surprise. A surprise because of many things. One, Mungatana had chaired an ad hoc committee
the one on Shakahola,
to look at the Shakahola.
And that's the reason why you're feeling that it was a reactionary bill to that matter? Okay.
I know before, soon after that, the president also appointed a committee, a presidential task force, chaired by Reverend Mutawa Musimi, which was very inclusive. It had various ones, and it was meant to now look at the whole issue about regulatory framework for the churches, basically to create a framework for the churches. The report had just been submitted to the president, and when I guess the president was waiting for Attorney General to settle down. When that was happening, Mungatana very quickly came up with his own bill. He did not involve church leaders in coming up with the bill. Not even church leaders, religious organizations. He didn't involve them. Yet he wanted to. So the content of that bill has a problem. The manner in which it was done, in a hurry, it has a problem. Even the house where it is being placed.
You having a problem?
With
the fundamental issues already.
Article 186 of the Constitution, he's a lawyer, but he'll tell you Article 186 of the Kenya Constitution 2010 already specifies what kind of bills can go through the National Assembly, what kind of bills can go through the Senate. This is a religious issue which is provided for in Schedule 4 of the Constitution, Part 4, lists religious affairs to be a national issue. It needs to go to the National Assembly.
I want you to indulge it and help us here, because so we have drafted this bill and we're feeling, like you're saying, the way it was drafted, the manner in which it actually came. You to come in as the legal expert in this matter, what would you tell Mungatana and everyone who drafted this bill, perhaps it was a team, to perhaps remedy it? What would you tell them? So that then we can now speak about acceptability from the church.
And unfortunately, Melissa, at this juncture, the bill has already been published. It was published on 23rd of August, if I'm not wrong, 2024. So it's awaiting processing before the Senate. other than what my co-guest has spoken about,
yes,
being the environmental issues that surrounded the publishing of this bill, even the content itself leaves a lot to be desired, and not just one or two sections or one or two parts. When you read the bill from the regulatory framework, there is a registrar, there is a proposed registrar of religious organizations who is meant to be appointed by an advisory board, which is again drawn from, I think, Section 20A of the Office of the Attorney General Act. Now, the membership of this advisory board does not in any way contemplate the involvement or participation of stakeholders. That's with respect to the regulatory framework. When you look at that bill again, Section 9, it speaks about the county executive member without specifying which county executive member this is, having a mandate to participate in oversighting how elections of religious organizations are done, enforcing provisions of the Act, doing inspections. Now that's Section 9. When I go to other parts, you find provisions. They're lumped up in a place where we are having them listed as miscellaneous provisions. But when you look at the content of those miscellaneous provisions, they should not be miscellaneous as such. They should have, if accepted, first of all, they should have come in the meat of the piece of legislation and not the miscellaneous part. Now, the bill does not even talk about the principles. It straight away goes into objectives. And like he said, and I think you've also mentioned it, the bill came as a surprise and as a reaction to something happened. And all of us acknowledge that what happened was not good. It was bad, but do you approach such a weighty national issue by immediate prescription or ensuring that there is a broad-based consultation and approach, which is actually a constitutional prerogative under Article 10. So looked at totality, even when you talk about the religious organizations and the umbrella organizations, the umbrella religious organizations, the bill provides for the leadership or management of that organization being composed of a board of trustees, number one, and religious leaders. But when you look at the Act, if you really comb through it, you will find that the board of trustees, which actually manages the church, is only allowed to have one religious leader. We are talking about a religious institution here, but you prescribe so much so that you even possibly remove the object, the spirit, purpose, and tenor of why we should have religious organizations in the country. So with those few pointers, to me, as a legal mind, I would think that the best thing would be either to withdraw it completely, not even either. It has to be withdrawn completely, and other options considered, because other than that ad hoc committee, there was a presidential task force. This presidential task force was not composed of just senators. It was composed of people who were appointed by the president from all walks of life. And logic would suggest or demand that it's more likely that when you're dealing with this task force, the output of the task force would be more responsive to the needs of not just the public, but even the specific religious organizations we are talking about. So in brief, I think the manner in which the bill is drafted and the objective, the general objective, if you look at the spirit, which you can draw from the letter of the bill, it may be necessary for a complete withdrawal and the strategy if we are to achieve the good objective of trying to regulate organization.
Rev, are you agreeing? Did you look at the task force report?
Yes.
How do they weigh?
By the way, Melissa, I've taken time to, just on 25th, I had a meeting here with the Nairobi leaders here. And we had bishops, and we issued a statement on 25th. On 27th, I was in Mombasa, still talking about the report and the bills, the two bills. we had our legal expert, Kanjama,
Yes.
Mr. Charles Kanjama, he was with us. I went to Nakuru, saying the same thing. I've gone to Kisumu. So and we have also sensitized our church leaders, even virtually. So the bill, when you look at it, it's an affront to religious organizations' programs. And we sense that it is particularly very dangerous, even for raising children. Because, for example, the bill says that a child cannot be, no one can minister to a child unless they're with a parent. Now, we go to church, for example, even in mosque. When you go to a mosque and you are preaching, assume you are preaching in the pulpit, and a child walks in. Do you stop and say, we want to know who is the father of that child first? Because then you need to ask for permission. Now look at high schools. I do ministry in high schools. When you go to high schools, they are boarding. Do you wait to call parents to give them consent to go and do, already in the law, the Education Act, 2013, already provide for guidance. KICD Act provide that religious education is to be taught. If you go and we have programs in schools, since Ominde Commission on Education 1964, already we have been doing what is called pastoral program instruction. This bill now says all those practices must not be done without the consent of the parent. That's why I'm saying the bill is basically handicapping, creating a handicap to religious ministries. Now, it's talking about the trustees board that they're talking about. All churches, the bishop or the head or the moderator, or even the head, even in mosque, the head of that institution is a chair of most of the committees. This particular bill is saying they are to have a religious leader who is not the serving bishop to be the head of that institution. It's a paradox. So the laity are supposed now to be in charge of spiritual matters of the church. Yet, they are not experts. Look at the registrar, for example. The qualifications of the registrar is the first item listed after the objectives. When you look at them, they only need any master's degree, regardless of what they have studied, to come and regulate matters of church. And that registrar can ask for any information at any time. And the church, the head of that institution only has between 2 weeks to 60 days to provide that information. Failure to which is an offense, punishable by 10 million Kenya shillings penalty for the institution. And then the leaders, the present leaders, are to pay a fine as well. In other words, someone can be an atheist regulating religious organizations because he qualifies. He doesn't need any theology. He doesn't need anything experience with the religious leaders, religious organizations. He can be the head, demand ridiculous things. He can be asking for audit report of 2019, 2018.
And you will have to submit it.
If you have to submit, if a religious leader has traveled, like our leaders travel a lot, within 2 months, he comes back, he finds the church has been closed. And then that registrar does not report to anyone. He doesn't, the registrars are sweeping powers. And he's also demanded, required to go to all the religious organizations once a year. It is, you need a supernormal, a human being.
You know, the moment people started, the church started objecting to the bill, most people went straight to the provision on tithing and taxation of tithes and offerings. And was that an issue? Because I'm not hearing you mentioning that at all.
Because that's obviously very ridiculous. You know, the religious organization services are considered public benefit services. The same way NGOs and children homes and all these kind of NGOs are given tax waivers. They don't, in churches and religious organizations do not pay tithe or do not pay tax on tithe because tithe is already taxed. When I give my tithe to church, I'm getting it out of the money that the government has already tithed. And I'm not giving the church to go and do anything with. It's sometimes to provide school fees for children, to run missions, to run programs, to teach children. You get? So it is a social a social service, which basically is being done on behalf of the government. Does government pay tax on the tax?
Some of the thorny issues that I imagine on this one.
Yeah.
maybe to add to what he's saying, and to explain why I feel like the backbone of the bill is a bit problematic.
Okay.
One of the key issues that religious leaders have been advocating for is the need for self-regulation. I do not imagine that, and I have not heard actually religious leaders saying that they do not want regulation, they do not want accountability and things like those. But because of the nature of religious organizations and the objectives that they exist to achieve, it would be necessary that as much as is possible, they are allowed to self-regulate, because other than the law, there are religious instructions that are provided for in religious texts that also aid and assist to provide for ways in which religious organizations are managed. Now, when you look at the Mungatana bill, it gives with one hand by saying that other than religious organizations, you can register umbrella religious organizations. But when you go back to Section 9, and I think if you read it together with Section 20, the role of the registrar, together with the county executive committee member, is to actually oversight, implement, and ensure that the provisions of the Act are adhered to. So at what point are we talking about self-regulation? It's like giving with one hand and taking with the other.
So successfully regulating the church.
Actually, Mungatana bill is not even recommending self-regulation. Because even the provisions, the task that the religious umbrella organizations are to do is like, do it, or even if you don't do it, we are still coming for you. So the bill by Mungatana is dangerous. Yeah, it's dangerous. And when it comes to looking at, we have told you about the Presidential Task Force report. It had given a better framework of how churches were to be religious organizations were to be regularized. But Mungatana's bill, the intention, when you look at it, you know, you can you can treat it like a literature. You see, when you read a book, you can read the mood of the author.
Yeah.
The mood of the author of that bill is like saying, you people, you are disturbing us, we are coming for you. We are going to close you. The intention, I think, is to close all religious organizations, in my view. Yeah. Because if the registrar can withdraw the certificate, you know, yes, the registrar has powers to withdraw the certificate at will. So basically, the intention is bad, and I personally say that the bill is like a vehicle that has had an accident, and it's a write-off.
Yeah.
You can't repair it. You only sell it off as a scrap metal. You get? So that's the way it is. So you cannot panel beat it. You know, some people say, oh, let's go and amend it. You can't amend it because even the mood, the attitude, the intentions.
So for me, perhaps I would want to know, so at this point of the bill, what can we possibly do? Alvin, would you give perspective to that?
Actually, we want to thank the president.
Yes.
Twice. He has pronounced himself on this bill. Just on Sunday,
Yes.
He was quoted, he said in AIC Church Milimani that even himself, he agrees that the bill is bad and it will not, he would prefer the Presidential Task Force proposal, the report, to be implemented.
Yes.
So we thank His Excellency the President for doing that. Then we would want him then to proceed, because his office can actually ask right to speaker.
Yeah.
And have the private member withdraw the bill.
Yeah.
We know it's a democratic process and it's a private thing, but already there is a problem with the bill up front. So we appeal to the private member, Honorable Mukatana, who himself was raised by church. He was paid for by the church actually.
Okay.
When he was in school, he schooled at Alliance. And Alliance was started by the churches. So. So basically, it's a paradox that someone who was raised by the hand that fed him is the one that he wants to cut off. So that the other children from Tana River, for example, and even other parts of this country, who really need that kind of assistance, the money that was used for supporting institutions like Alliance and many other programs, the churches in this country alone started 64% of the Kenya schools. Actually, 68% of all the schools in this country were founded by the church. You get? Hospitals, the missions hospitals constitute more than 48% of all the missions all the hospitals in this country.
Wow.
That is that's just the basic I'm telling you about what the church is. Look at education, even at the universities. The private universities today, most of them were founded by the church and religious organizations. So the services that the churches and the religious organizations do in this country cannot be overemphasized. Cannot be overemphasized. And the services are offered freely. We don't insist that someone has to be a member of that congregation to be able to attend that church.
You admit everything.
Yeah. So,
what would you say?
I agree with Reverend.
Yeah.
That understanding that the bill, once published, can be withdrawn. Actually, there is room for withdrawal by the member once it's been published. It would be necessary then, and also taking into account the sentiments that we all had or even read in news reports about the president saying that we wouldn't want churches to be regulated like that. It would be necessary that he is prevailed upon for the first reason that generally speaking, and from anecdotal evidence, the people who are meant to be regulated by the proposed bill do not appear to have been allowed to give their views. So that's the first thing. Secondly, because of the issues raised with not just the content, but the manner in which the bill has been drafted, it would be absolutely necessary to ensure that it doesn't go to the next stage, because the objectives, regardless of how noble they were, will not be achieved. And of course, speaking as somebody who goes to court again, I should say that as a measure of last resort, in the event that that does not happen, where we are at now as a country, and I think everyone has seen, you cannot bring laws to attempt to regulate a certain group of people without public participation or even any administrative decision. You can't make, I'm speaking about Article 47 of the Constitution. Any person who's affected has to be made aware of an administrative decision, and in this case, the possibility of having an act of parliament which goes through that process without having consideration or adopting the views of the people. And all of us will remember that recently when I think Senator Okiya Omtata went to court, all the way to the Court of Appeal, the court said that public participation is not cosmetic. You don't just involve people and take their views. You must demonstrate to the court that you took them. How did you took them? How did you consider them? Did you consider them? If you didn't, why didn't you? But it appears that this is a clear case where it will be very difficult, almost impossible to demonstrate that there was any form of public participation.
Let's take a break right now. I'm with Reverend Kefa Nyandega from the EAK and Advocate Alvin Koskei from the High Court. We're discussing the religious bill, the religious organization bill by Danson Ngatana, the senator for Tana River. We will be right back. We'll delve into this a bit more. Send in your questions and let's see what you have to say about this matter.
I've actually been trying to find a balance. It's been really tough and hectic, but everyone says once you get a hang of it, it becomes better, and I don't know, but I'm hoping to find a balance soon because it's really been hectic. But you've been in the job industry for a long time, so I think you would know better. Sindio?
Huh? What time is it? I need to catch up on Leadership Forum. Do they have a radio here? Never mind. I brought my own.
No way. You can't be serious. Wait, why do you have a radio and you can just catch up with the shows on Hope FM podcast?
Really? Even Meet of the Word?
Yeah. I mean, you can find them on whatever platform, name it. AfriPods, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, you name it.
But I'm not subscribed on any of them.
So no worries. You can just check out the latest episodes on hopemediakenya.org.
You can now listen to select Hope FM programs on your favorite podcast streaming platform or directly on our website, www.hopemediakenya.org. Listen and live.
So we're back with Rev Nyandega and Advocate Alvin from the High Court to discuss a bit more about the Ngatana bill, aka Religious Organizations Bill. But before we do so, you guys have sipped your water, you're good now. Now we can talk about this other matter that is happening nationally. Rev, you know, we prayed for him on Sunday and we laid hands on him and we wished him well as he went to face the panel over his impeachment. And the National Assembly has decided to give him a kick to the curve. So the Senate has also chosen to discuss him on Tuesday, the Deputy President, Rigathi Gachagua. What are your reflections about this whole matter?
Yeah, we, as the religious community, especially from the Evangelical Alliance of Kenya, we find this to be quite unfortunate for many reasons. One is because this is just 2 years since we elected this team to the office. And no matter how bad someone is, they can be given a second chance. And he has been appealing for forgiveness to His Excellency the President. And we're not saying that he's perfect, he's good. But when you look at it, we sense that this impeachment issue, the speed at which it came and the publicity it stole, was basically being used to divert the public attention from the real challenges that Kenyans are facing. The zeal, the commitment, the passion with which the members of Parliament, National Assembly, have put in this energy that they have used in this thing, all of a sudden they were available to go to all their constituencies to lead public participation. If they did that to fight corruption, if they did that to focus on education, Melissa, look at it, next year, our students, grade 8, and I have a child who is grade 8, up to now, the classes are not being built in primary schools. Remember, the president had lobbied the government had said that they were going to use CDF money to build the classrooms. CDF was suspended. It was declared unconstitutional.
Yeah.
So they can no longer use that money. There is no money going. Exchequer cannot send money to CDF. Those are the real issues. Then there is the hospital, NHIF, which is moving now to SHIP. And there are many challenges, you see. Then there is our airport, which is in the hands of Swan Adani. Then there are issues about Ketraco. Then when you are focusing on these issues, then something all of a sudden is so urgent, an emergency, that he has to go. And couldn't the president have just given him a second chance? As a religious community, we offered to even mediate. We have done that before. Religious leaders, the kind of difference that was there is not the kind that was there during the post-election violence, during even the after elections. Religious leaders have come to help. We had the conflict of the previous regime with the opposition. Religious leaders came through and were able to mediate. We were willing, but the speed at which this happened just tell you that it is not the impeachment they're looking for.
Yeah,
it is meant to focus on something. The public attention need to be focusing on this, but you are being dragged into this bill. So for us, we would want to appeal still to the Senate. The Senate, we hope that they are sober. They can be sober enough to look at those issues again. We know there are some of the issues that are weighty, and they can be prosecuted in the courts and all that.
Yeah.
Issues about conflict of interest, the issues they are raising. And the discussions about the shares, it talks about. But how much of that talk is influencing government to focus money, resources, to only those places? So we don't want to talk about the merit or the demerits about the issues. We want to look at the principles. And His Excellency the President had gone public at election time and promised the country that no matter what happens, he will never treat his deputy in the manner in which he was treated, according to him. The former president Uhuru Kenyatta was with him for 10 years. He wasn't perfect. He had also his own issues. There were many challenges. He said how he was being frustrated, but never did the president mobilize his people.
Impeach.
And remember, he was with Baba. Baba was with him.
Yes.
They could have influenced the parliament. They had the majority. They did not impeach the president when he was deputy president. 2 years, he's now doing this to his friend.
I think
the law being followed in the
I think I definitely agree with Rev that there is a lot that the country is going through at this juncture. And they are not light issues. They are weighty issues that have implications, not just for us, but for generations to come. And I would just want to say I would have wished to see the same level of commitment, urgency, being channeled towards addressing those issues. And let me just use a comparative analysis here. I don't think if at home, for instance, I had an issue, and of course we do not have the full facts. I do not think if at home I had an issue with the second in command at home, who would be my wife, I would quickly, immediately rush to saying, no, it can't work. You try and work things out. Like also he said, at face value, some of those allegations that have been tabled there are weighty. Some of them, from my personal opinion, may not be as weighty. in which case I would think that everybody deserves a second chance, and especially considering the ethnic divisions that we from time to time see in our country. In as much as we are saying we want the basis for impeachment is because the deputy president has said something about shareholding and whatnot. But other than the content, an overview of the principles and the possible outcome would be possible feeling of balkanization by certain sections of society. We'd want to see the Senate rising, of course, to the occasion. Again, in my view, I think the members of the National Assembly were very quick. It appeared as though they were already made up.
Decided,
and maybe they didn't engage with the issues as they ought to have. Let's see whether the upper house will have a different approach. They say that justice, this is not a court, should not just be done, but it should also be seen to have been done.
We'll leave it to the Senate and see how this thing plays out. So back to our conversation on the churches. You know, in Kenya, we say we are like 80% Christians.
85.5%.
Is that a statistic?
2019, the latest.
Okay, so in there are also the cults, and those are the churches that, you know,
anyone knew.
Massacre. So when it comes to some of this, how do you regulate some of these entities then? Because Nyandega, you are in the EAK, and it's an umbrella organization of churches, but the other churches are just standalones. So how then are we able to successfully regulate when it plays out like that?
And that now brings me back, takes me to the Presidential Task Force report. The Presidential Task Force report was consultatively well done, or consultatively constituted. We had representation from the Hindu, we had the representation from Muslims, from Catholics, from SDA, Seventh-day Adventist Church, from the Protestants under the NCCK. We had representation from the Evangelical Alliance of Kenya. That in itself tells you that the people who are thinking about how to do self-regulations were senior people. And they were all bishops with, we had the bishops or whatever high leaders, level of leadership in their own religious organizations. They spent time. They went to every county, literally, across this country. They visited 4 countries at least outside for best practices. They consultatively, they invited various groups to bring their own presentations. I remember I participated in a process that also made a presentation. So in a sense, they thought what the document they have proposed, coming to look at the religious organization, the smaller ones, when you talk about it, because this is not just church, it is also all the religious organizations. They have proposed 2 pathways for regulations. Those who prefer to be done, to go through the self-regulations are free to join umbrella organizations. And the umbrella organizations have been given an opportunity to come up with a code of conduct for their members, which regulates them. And then those who do not prefer to go under any organization, they are free to be regulated directly by the registrar of religious organization, who is answerable to the Religious Affairs Commission. There's a commission that has been set up to kind of oversee the process of regulations. But that is that level. But the previous Mungatana bill does not have Religious Affairs Commission. It is the registrar who does regulations. If not, they go straight. And whatever he does, he is not answerable to anyone. It also provides for the registrar needs to be someone with some theological training. Meaning, it's someone who understands the terrain. And the leadership of those churches, those religious organizations, are affirming what is there. In fact, even the matter of qualifications for ministry is left for the umbrella organization to determine. So if Evangelical Alliance, for example, decide, make in their own way, they said, for us to preach, you need a certificate basic, it's up to you. For KCCB, for example, Catholics are also part of that team. I didn't mention them. When the Catholics say, for you to be a priest, currently, for you to be a priest in Catholic Church, you must have at least 2 degrees. Bachelors of Theology and Bachelors of Philosophy, before you are accepted as even a brother. For them, that is what works for them. For the churches under NCCK, they are at a different level. So it's allowed for every umbrella organization to determine. And when you talk about code of conduct, the religious organization had already thought about the need for having self-regulation. And they had come up with a religious, they had come up with a code of conduct for churches and church ministers, together with the governance organs, suggested governance organs, governance guidelines. And this did not come up during the Presidential Task Force report. It came up while the churches sometimes back had started thinking about regulation, self-regulation, and they were crafting, how do you do self-regulations? So they came up with a process. They set up, they requested a SABICA, an organization called a SABICA, to provide the technical support. And in that technical team, they had various oversight, various key leaders providing the oversight of that process, together with the technical team, with people from the legal profession. One of them was a former registrar of societies who was regulating churches. And they came up with a very good model. It's unfortunate I didn't come with a copy of that. And they came up with a very nice document called Code of Conduct for churches and governance guidelines. This is available in the website of ESABICA. One can go to ESABICA and will find the Code of Conduct. You don't need to register your name. Free. And one can look at it. And for us as Evangelical Alliance of Kenya, we soon after that document was launched last year, the last year's AGM endorsed that.
Can we table it? Can it be made into rules? Then we got
no, it's part of what and it was tabled. It was presented to the Mutawa Musimi task force. When they looked at the report, they felt like this is like doing the work more already. The work is already done. Just a little panel beating here and there and to fit within the law. Because when we were doing that, we had a problem. We were wondering, how will we enforce it? So the proposed bill provides for how this now will be enforced. Because the church currently, the churches are free to go through their leadership structures and look at it. We can take them through. The SABICA is willing to take them, and I've been doing that even within our members. We take them through their leadership. They say they are happy with this provision. They are happy with this. They don't want to do this one. Only that there are certain provisions that are a must, like for example, use of finances. It has to be above board. And issues about the role of some provisions there about the doctrine and all that kind of things to be taught. So already that was already provided for. So this Presidential Task Force report and the bill that they are proposing is already providing a fair. It is not perfect. It still has to go.
Ground that you can use.
Now this one is a fair one that needs panel beating here and there. But Mungatana one is a write-off.
So then, is this the direction to go?
Yes. And let me just add something. And I like what Rev had said. This is not the first time we are trying to have a discussion around regulation. Of religious organizations. And the unfortunate thing is that in my very personal view, the Mungatana bill has a striking semblance to the regulations under the Societies Act that were proposed by the then Attorney General in 2015. If you flesh out the main provisions of the Mungatana bill and you compare them side by side with respect to who has the mandate to register, reporting obligations and qualifications of officers of religious organizations, the bill bears striking semblance or similarity with those regulations. And it's unfortunate that in as much as the efforts that we are seeing now were they gathered clouds and force after the unfortunate events of Shakahola. But when you look at the Mungatana bill and you compare it to the recommendations of the Presidential Task Force and the policy and even the bill, the Mungatana bill does not even address the issue of proliferation of cultic organizations and taking advantage of gullible believers. When you look at, I think, section 60-something of the bill that was proposed by the Presidential Task Force, it creates certain offenses that actually directly address the issues that we were trying to grapple with at that time. What am I saying then? It then appears that it would be logically correct to suggest to our viewers that, strictly speaking, I do not think that the Mungatana bill addresses the issues that it ought to have addressed, if you ask me. And if that then is true, then it would be necessary then to take just the only logical route out, which is to withdraw that and give a push to the bill that has the unanimous support of stakeholders and does not just give lip service to self-regulation, but does it in actual sense. And when you look at the commission that Rev is talking about, I think under the bill that has been proposed by the task force, it does not prescribe or take the mandate by itself of regulating churches just like that. The composition of that commission also includes membership from some of the organizations that we know to have already been in this space and have the necessary technical expertise and experience that would lead us to where we want to go.
So I think we will do our final remarks on this. Rev, the onus is on the church as the major shareholder on this matter and the way forward. Perhaps what would, from where you're sitting, what would be some of the way forward for the church to consider when it comes to trying to figure out how to regulate ourselves?
Yeah, so for the way forward is, number one, Honorable Mungatana needs to withdraw the bill straight away. Already he sees that, he can see that there is no interest in it. Many people have a problem with it. Number two, we recommend, we would like His Excellency the President to set in place implementation committee of the Presidential Task Force report. That implementation committee will not be enforcing the bill as it is. But first, it will need to take the people, educate the public about this report. Because they just presented the report. Now the implementation team will need to take the public and create awareness of what the report was about. Because the report produced 3 documents. One was a proposed religious organizations bill. There was a proposed policy on regulation, and then there was a regulation framework, guideline. Now, Mungatana bill is proposing a bill without even a policy framework. There's no policy. And you know, he's a lawyer, he can tell you that a bill without a policy. Yes. So, that implementation committee, after that, they can, after they sensitize the public, we assume that within the implementation committee there will be Attorney General as part of that, or is designee, is a representation, so that then the document is taken through and polished well, and taken through then the parliament, and in this case we think that it needs to go to National Assembly. Because it's a national issue.
It's a national issue.
I know Honorable Mungatana was saying that his bill is taking it through the Senate because some religious organizations are just confined within the county. But today they are in the county, tomorrow they are in other counties. So what will you do? And so he's asking the counties and the national office to be regulating the same body, what is called double jeopardy. Yeah. So then the next thing we are proposing is that then the bill proposed by the task force then needs to be moved forward. And then taken through the normal process. People can make suggestions. It can be taken through the normal way. We go through public participation. We can make adjustment here and there, because it's not perfect the way it is. A few issues can be adjusted, but that is a fair way to move. And after all, the Presidential Task Force spent a lot of public money.
Yes, they did. Yes, they did.
It would really be sad that such an enormous resource and a very good report that came up is just thrown to gather the dust, and then we
like
are
many
now,
other reports that we have seen in the past. That would be so sad.
Yeah, because that task force, that report was not just meant for addressing Shakahola.
Yes.
It was addressing the long-term issue that has all along been talked about. The Shakahola just prompted it. They raised the agency, but this has been something that we've talked about before. Thank you.
Thank you, Reb. Yes, sir.
Yeah, and I think it's correct to say the Shakahola issue didn't lead to the task force, but it just increased the urgency. Other than what Trevor said, I think it's of absolute necessity that churches ensure that they are part and parcel of the process of public participation and educating their members the contents of both bills, where we are now, and more people, more technical input needs to be considered and adopted, so that as the church engages with the bills, it also engages with the bills with the input of the experts who may be able to understand not just the contents but the processes that are going to follow, for instance, after and I hope the withdrawal of the Mungatana bill and the next steps that we need to take with respect to the bill that has been developed and the policy under the Presidential Task Force. Yeah, so once public participation is done, the steps which I think Rev has caught spot on would be the next steps, but public participation is of absolute necessity because other than the people who engage with these things and the people who know the code of conduct which has been developed by Sabika, a large percentage of believers and the members of churches don't even know about the conflicting provisions of this bill. So it's important that members are made aware of where we are now as members of the religious corpus.
The key stakeholders in this matter. Thank you, gentlemen, for indulging me on this matter. It has come in our news several times, so we needed to actually debunk it and figure out what is happening here. Why is every church press conference saying we are saying no to this matter, no to this matter? So thank you so much for your time, Rev Nyandega. You're a friend of Hope Media. We love you so much. Thank you for your time. Thank you, Alvin Koskei, High Court Advocate. Thank you for the good work you're doing at the EAK. We appreciate you. May God bless you. And thank you for your time. My name is Melissa Oduor. We'll see you on the other side of the studio as I do the news for the day.